Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sonya, also known as SG from Let the Lady Speak podcast. Here on my podcast, we have healthy discussions about life, love, dating, and relationships while promoting self-love, healing, and healthy dating. Tonight, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, y'all. We're going to talk about therapy. You know, I want to put everybody in therapy. That's what my friends say. This evening, we have the beautiful, wonderful Miss Alicia Jackson. Miss Jackson is a licensed professional counselor, and she's going to help us understand, talk about where we are right now with therapy counseling in our wonderful community. So, Miss Jackson, thank you so much for coming onto my podcast. I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. This is a really, really important conversation. So I'm grateful to be here.
I'm grateful to have you. Thank you. So, we're going to hop right into it. On my channel, both my podcast and my YouTube channel, I talk a lot about mental health and the importance of mental health. I talk a lot about therapy, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions about therapy. So hopefully we can clear
Absolutely.
some of those things up today.
Mhm.
So let's tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice before we get started.
Well, I am, of course, a licensed therapist. I've been doing it for, oh Lord, 14 years. I don't like to say that out loud because it makes me feel a little aged. I just think of it like wine, maybe, because age age means it's getting better with time, right?
You are
I've
seasoned, honey. That's good
seasoned,
seasoning. You marinated and
seasoned.
seasoned. That's good.
Yes, yes, I have. I have been. I've done a lot of work actually in my earlier parts of my career in community mental health and working with adults and with children and family. And so now in this last 3 years or so, I've been in private practice, and I work in actually two private practices. One is Wentworth and Associates, and then one called Focus Focus Therapy Clinic. And so, yes, I have been working there and loving it. Loving the work that we do. I've been a little busy, unfortunately, due to the pandemic. It's been just a lot of people that have been struggling, and there's been so much transition through it. But definitely grateful to be of some help and some resource during this time for sure. So. Yeah.
That is awesome. That is awesome. One thing I can say that this pandemic has done is
Mhm.
open a lot of individuals' eyes
Yeah.
to I need help, being okay with saying I need help and
Mhm.
to the options of therapy or
Yeah.
coaching or group relationships or whatever therapeutic tool they can
Mhm.
seek. So I love that. Even like with BetterHelp coming out, things like
Mhm.
that, like there's options now, whereas before people didn't know where to go, but now you can
Yeah.
see, hey, you can come here and seek help. So great
Mhm.
job, my lady. I love it. She
Yes.
is busy, Miss Jackson.
Yes, I am. So I'm trying to practice self-care too and get some, and some balance. Because at first I was really feeling the burden, because the burden to help. And I had to talk to myself, like, okay, we need to get some boundaries even for you as well, because you're going through this pandemic just like everyone else is too, and you need some time too. So, but I'm definitely grateful again to be in this space, and grateful, like you said, that people have turned to mental health and that there have been more resources. I think it's just because, one, when the world kind of stopped,
Mhm.
people were left with what they've been actively either avoiding, and so a lot of their thoughts were with them, right? And
Mhm.
they had nothing to. There's only so much Netflix you can watch, right? There's only so much you can avoid, and so they had to deal with that. And then also the uncertainty, and if they experience even COVID or a death of a loved one, all of that. So I'm just again grateful that this is becoming something that's more and more accepted as something that is needed, and it's not
Yes.
something that's viewed as something that is a character flaw, right? Or a judgment to say maybe you should talk to someone.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a nurse and I worked through
Mm-hmm.
COVID, and a lot of us are struggling. I share with you that I'm part of a trauma group. One of the reasons why I
Mm-hmm.
went is a friend, one of my closest friends. She's the ICU nurse.
Wow.
I do med surg float now, and we both went through COVID, and you saw it was just a big strain on us.
Yeah.
Um, And you do. Everybody needs help. I was at lunch one day and one of my coworkers just out of the blue, she was like, I don't want another pizza. I want a therapist. And I was like,
I know that's right. How many
yeah.
cupcakes
I
or
don't need
pizza?
cupcakes. A pizza, a pop. I mean, it was nice that they were feeding us. They were definitely
Yeah.
pouring into us at that time, but it was
Hmm.
a lot because the hospital, it was so dark in that
Yeah.
space. So
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And we can't avoid it. We had to
Hmm.
work from home, so you couldn't run away from home and
Hmm.
go to work to avoid issues you were having with your mate
Absolutely.
or yourself or your children or whatever was
No.
happening. They said the rose
No.
rates went up during the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so then you are dealing with your relationships. You're dealing with the thoughts or issues that you've been avoiding, and then the ability to cope has been also minimized. Not able to go to the gym, not able to do so much, and or go on vacation or things like that. So now you're really like sitting with maybe the job that you were using vacations to kind of cope with, but now it's like, no, I really need to get another job, or no, I really need to deal with these issues, or maybe even in the relationship. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been challenging. Lots of challenges, but I think the more and more that we truly attend to ourselves and take time to attend to ourselves, instead of avoiding
Mhm.
ourselves, right? Then and sit with it and get curious about it,
Yeah.
and get curious about not judging ourselves for our thoughts or our feelings that we have. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree. So there's a huge misconception, and you kind of touched on it a
Mm-hmm.
little bit earlier. There's a misconception about therapy. What exactly is therapy?
So do you want my definition or the other definition?
Can we have both? Can I be
Yes.
greedy?
Yes, you can have both. I was going to
Okay.
give you both. I was just being
Okay.
silly asking a question. But I think so. How someone would define therapy is a place to heal or deal with, uh, psychological um, psychological issues, um, problem behaviors, right, and to find a place to cope and manage with these behaviors and get treatment.
Mhm.
How I define therapy is a brave place. I used to say safe place, but it's
Mhm.
really a brave place where you help to unburden yourself from the burdens of protection. Mhm.
I love that. I
Mhm.
might have to steal that, Miss Alicia. I
You okay? You can still.
love that.
Hmm.
No, because it takes away that stigma a little bit. It
Hmm.
does. You have to be brave to say, I'm gonna go share these inner thoughts that I don't even really want to share with myself, honestly,
Hmm.
because people deny, they
Yeah.
ignore what they're feeling or thinking, and you
Hmm.
put that into someone else's hand, and you're ready to start saying those things aloud and
Yeah.
dealing with those things and feeling those things, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But yeah, I love that. I
Hmm.
love your definition.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we work, like we were talking earlier. We work so hard to avoid those things, and then also every session, or the first session that I usually have with a client, I usually say, I just want to acknowledge the internal process it took to say, hey, I need to talk to somebody, and then actually following through with it.
Mhm.
Because a lot of people have that epiphany and a lot of people have that thought, but it doesn't get them or land them into the therapist's office. And the fact that you followed through with that, that's a whole internal process, and you should be proud of yourself for doing that, because
Abs-
it takes work. It takes work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It does take a lot of work and it does take you being brave and it takes a lot of trust. We
Mhm.
commend everyone that's out getting therapy. Hats off to you.
Yes.
Great job. You're doing your
Yes.
thing. We love you for it.
Yes.
So, what are some of the past and present misconceptions about therapy?
Ooh. I think one, and it was one that really used to boggle my mind, is that it's a place where there's judgment. But I do fault the um I want to say, like, the how it is formed, right? How therapy shows up, right? Therapists have to, because of billing purposes, use a diagnosis, right? And at the same time, I feel like the diagnosis really like is accepting that or receiving that can be such a process. Can be like, what? Okay, I said I was sad. You're saying I'm clinically depressed. Okay. I said some bad things happened to me. You're saying I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I remember as a student, I used to look at the word disorder like, couldn't they come up with something else? Like disorder just sounds so heavy to receive that. So I think really some of the misperceptions is that there will be judgment because of that, right? Because now I'm being labeled, right, quote unquote, and really it's unfortunately a part of the process, and fortunately I should say, so it's both ends. We have to name something, right, in order to treat it, and we have to address something in order to say it's really hindering us. And so that's a part of the process. And sometimes people do feel like being in the therapist chair means something's wrong with me, or that I'm going to receive judgment, right? Even some parents, a lot really struggle and wait to have their children come to see a therapist because they feel like their children seeing a therapist means that they did something wrong as a parent or they failed as a parent. And so, I think that's just a misconception about it. Like we said, we all need it. We all need it. So that's definitely one thing. And I feel that for some that there's a misconception that the therapist has like this little drawer of like magic and and they're gonna pull out the drawer and say like abracadabra, poof, right? You're healed. Thank you. And that it's real work and that they have to do the work. And they're like, oh, I have to do work. I have to do things. There's homework. I have to work to like change how I think about certain things, and I have to do affirmations every day. I got to do a gratefulness journal. So I think sometimes there is that perception that a therapist has like this magic wand in their desk and they're like, abracadabra, poof, so, it can be funny as a therapist to really hear that sometimes, from a client, like, oh, I thought that coming here was just going to fix it. Like just coming to therapy was going to fix it. And maybe that's, on our end to really educate more about what's in the therapeutic process, like what is that about and what's needed as you as a participant in therapy. But yeah, that is a perception for sure. That is false, that therapy is not work. Because it is. It is. There is no magic wand. I'm sorry. They didn't give me one. I wish they did. I wish they did. It would be easier. I wish they did.
Everyone will be cured. We will all be okay. We
Yes.
will all have tools. We will all be able to stop and think, is this really happening or is this my narrative? Like, absolutely. You know what? And I find that in coaching as well. It's kind of like sometimes people just want you to just come and they just want to talk. So I'm like, okay, if you just want to talk, tell me that. But if we're talking about growing, moving past something, achieving a goal, you got to do some work. And application is key, and that's the other thing. I did a video about that too. Like you have to apply your therapy. You have to do your therapist homework. Your therapist gives you homework. You have to apply it. Because I do have some clients, they coach with me, but they have a therapist because we are completely different.
Right.
And sometimes I'm on the phone like, what did you call your therapist? What What did
Did you
your
call?
therapist say? What was your homework last week? You know what I mean? Because then it's about helping with that accountability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
have to do these things. It's not, well, it's not working. It won't work if you don't do the work, if you don't apply, if you don't follow through, if you don't communicate. That's another thing I think is a huge barrier. You're keeping
Yes.
secrets. Don't keep your secrets. You got to say what is really going on. Don't come give me a piece of a story. Look at your
Oh,
face.
Sonya. Oh, Sonya, the stories I can tell you, but I will not because of HIPAA. But the stories I could say, it is. I mean, sometimes I know it's just a protective. I know it's just a protective mechanism. I know that it's a part of the client system where they're really trying to either protect how they feel or they have shame about it, right? They have shame about it. So I understand it. And I think also another misconception is like your therapist is supposed to tell you what to do. Your therapist is supposed to tell you what to do. Yeah, I'm like, no, that's not my job. That's not my job. One, that's a heavy job. That's a very heavy job. And I always tell my clients, you are the expert on you. You are the expert on you. I see you once a week for an hour. You are with you 24/7. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're asking me a question, that means you got some questions about it, you're curious about it, and there's some internal conflict. So let's talk about it. And I'm going to tell you what you're saying. And oftentimes they're like, "Oh, the way you said it sounds different." I'm like, "Well, I'm just telling you what I'm hearing." and then and then and then my reflection of what they're saying helps to give them some clarity and gives them some things to say. But it's not my job to tell them what to do. No.
Absolutely. And I think too with that, no one we therapy coaching, whichever, or both, the goal isn't to have you there forever.
No.
The goal isn't for you to be in the same space forever. The goal is
No.
for you to grow and for you to have
Mm-hmm.
tools to move forward with,
To keep using. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm trying to work myself out of a job. Okay. and because I want, and it's really important. I think sometimes there is people who are lacking confidence or, for whatever reason. And then also are having if they have had to, they don't believe in themselves, right? So they depend on people. They're used to depending on others. So they will kind of have that same relationship with the therapist. And so I had to tell them, like, no, this is about you gaining confidence in you to navigate whatever comes your way, and do it from a place of strength, right? Do it from a place where you are knowing and using your wisdom and the lessons that you've learned and the tools that you gathered to be able to navigate life. And it's not like you can't come back to a therapist if you need a tune up, as we call it. It's more than okay. It's more than okay. So, but definitely like lifetime therapists. And sometimes people do have, I have to speak to this, that some people do have a lot of complex trauma. And so their work is going to be longer, right? Their work is going to be longer. So, but there is a window, right, where we can say, okay, how much time what would you like to accomplish? How long do you see yourself in therapy? And that could be a conversation.
Absolutely. And it's true because like you said, people have complex traumas, multiple, and
Mm-hmm.
then things happen later in life, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
you may have to come back because something
Mm-hmm.
new has happened. Your
Yeah.
childhood trauma is one thing. I share on my channel a lot about how I thought I was okay, which,
Mm-hmm.
I had therapy as a young child. My mom was an addict. I went through Al-Anon and everything with her, and we had therapy. We had family therapy, and I
Beautiful.
gained a lot of tools with that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there were other things that I hadn't even acknowledged, things I didn't know,
Yeah.
and later in life, after a huge breakup, is when I was like, okay, I need to figure out. Therapy, my initial round with therapy gave me the tools to know that sometimes you just have to check in. So I was like, I need to figure out why I made these mistakes or choices and, just be accountable, figure out what happened so this doesn't
Mm-hmm.
happen again because I don't want to go through this again.
Mm-hmm.
And build on from there. And it's different kind of work because there's different
Yeah.
spaces. I tell people it's like a house. You have all of you know, rooms you go into all the time, every day. And then you have some spaces you don't enter that often. And there's the basement and
Talk
the
about
attic
it.
that you don't go to.
Talk
You don't
about
go
it.
at all, you know, and things are up there growing. They have spider webs and
Dust
cobwebs and
everywhere.
dust everywhere. You know, you have
Mm-hmm.
to brush that off because you don't know, you don't realize how that's dictating how you're showing up in your relationships in your everyday life. So yeah.
I think too, to speak to that, there's this thought that's out there that, things that happened to you years and years ago, they're not really affecting how you showing up today. You could just get this, the phrase I wish we could throw away. You could just get over it. And I'm like, no, we get through it. We have to get through it. We have to experience it. We have to feel and it's so counterintuitive, like our brain is like, pain, go away, right? Like back up. And therapy is like sitting in your feelings and walking through it and having somebody hold your hand while you do it, right? And that's what's beautiful about it. But yes, we all have those spaces where we actively avoid, and then because of that, we forget what's in that box that's covered up with dust. We forget, and you're like, oh yeah, that did happen to me in elementary school. Yes, and things that are happening to you in elementary school are affecting you even as an adult. Yes, very true.
Very, very true. Very,
Mm-hmm.
very true. And because,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the brain's job is to protect you. So there are
Yes.
things. I had a client. She called me and she said, "I can't stop crying, and I don't know
Mm.
why." And it was a family event coming up, and she just kept
Mm.
saying, "I can't stop crying." So I was like, "Well, just journal whatever you're feeling, whatever you think, and just
Yeah.
write. Just kind of write it. Just
Mm-hmm.
um." And some things came out. Of course, I'm not going to share, but
Right.
that event that she had been waiting for her whole life. Now, for her whole
Mm-hmm.
life, she wanted this. And
Mm-hmm.
then when she got it, she remembered something.
Mm.
So, again,
Mm-hmm.
your brain protects you. You may not know your memory.
Absolutely.
You may have been too young. You may not have
Yeah.
thought it was a big deal because in our community, especially, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, we're taught to get over it. Don't think about it. Keep moving. Don't worry about it. It's not your
Mm-hmm.
business. You're oh
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother used to love to say you're too young for that to be a problem, right? Like I
Oh
used to get
yeah. Oh
migraines for
yeah.
my menstrual. She'd be like, "You're too young to have headaches." I'm like, "My head though."
Like it's hurting though,
See,
grandma.
like Granny, this migraine. Like I didn't know it was a migraine, but I'm like, my headache. I can't see. This is how bad my head is hurting.
My grandma used to say something that used to make me so confused as a child. I remember it, and she would say, "Don't fix your face before I give you something to cry about." And I'm just like, but you're my grandma who I love. Like I remember saying this as a kid, but you're my grandma who I really love. Like I really love, and you're disappointed and mad at me. And so that's making me have a facial expression because like I don't want to disappoint you. And you want me to hold my face like nothing is wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I love my grandmother, God rest her soul, sweetest woman in the world. And at the same time, I feel like what I would call it, or what the type of therapy I utilize, internal family systems, it's a legacy burden that we have in our community, the Black community. It's just this dismissiveness. It is this like feelings is just something that are expendable, right? It truly is a sign of weakness, and it's because of what we have gone through and the trauma that we've experienced, where we could not feel like we had to see a family member or a loved one being whooped, and while we're working and not have any emotional reaction to it because that was a way of survival. And that has just been continuously passed down. And
Come
it's
on now.
still very present in how we interact with each other and interact with how we parent our children. It truly is. So I'm grateful that we are allowing children to have feelings like that. Is becoming more acceptable and not viewed as babying them or spoiling them because they have feelings. Like there's a place and there's a way to handle that. They're trying to navigate life, and this life is hard. So
It's definitely hard, and
so
it's
if you got
okay.
headaches,
Granny. I'm like,
Yeah,
listen,
Granny. Yeah,
this
Granny.
thing is bad. She's like, just go lay down and drink some water.
Yes, that was the answer for everything, right? It's I'm in Michigan, so the answer for that was the answer for that was burners. If you everything was burners, so yeah.
I'm in Michigan, but I am from Ohio in Canada Dry.
Okay.
Get some ginger ale. Ginger
Yes.
ale
Hmm.
and X-Lax fix everything. I'm like,
It's like,
but I'm not.
no, I'm hurting.
There's
Maybe we should
something.
make
Let's go to
a
the doctor.
doctor's. Yes, make a doctor's appointment,
Baby, you
girl.
had to be near death. It had to be almost over. You had to have a
Yeah.
fever of 502 before it was time. Otherwise, she was going to fix it. Some Vicks and some aspirin and ginger ale and a chicken noodle
Absolutely.
soup.
And that's why, because most of us were struggling financially during that time and didn't have health insurance. Okay.
Yes.
So we didn't go to the doctor. And then also we didn't trust the doctor. Okay.
And that's
so
it. Yeah.
So you just gonna have to, you just got to drink this water and be okay. And so I'm grateful. I'm just so grateful, even though sometimes it can be so fatiguing. But I'm glad that we're having so many conversations about this.
I am too.
Yeah, I am. I think it's how we learn, it's how we grow, and I lean into it. There's definitely times where I'm on panels and people say things that make me have a response, and I have to center myself because I think that's how we learn. That's so how we learn. And so like, okay, tell me how you came to this conclusion. Tell me more. Help me understand how you got here, because then we can really get to a place of understanding. That's the goal.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you, like you said, you learn and you grow. And we're some of our experiences, and some people just don't know. It wasn't their experience. It's not what they've been taught. It isn't what they've been told to believe,
Absolutely.
all of those things. So I completely agree. Completely. So do you still feel like there's a stigma in our community, or do you think our community is getting better?
We are getting better. We are growing. I think that there is still some residual stigma there, still present. And sometimes I feel like it's some internalized stigma, there too. But it's really viewed as a weakness. I think that talking about your feelings just doesn't sound inviting or exciting, and I understand it. I 100% understand it, and I often feel, and I hear this language like, "Oh, you're going to therapy? What's wrong?" I'm like, "Who said something had to be wrong? Maybe you just needed to adjust your goals. Like you're like, I need to take a check in and see what's happening. Like, why does something have to be wrong with me?" Right. In order to go to therapy. And so I think we still have some growing to do, but there's definitely been so much progress. There's so much progress about it. And I think the learning edges are us understanding more about therapy and how we have to show up in therapy. Even parents too. Sometimes parents just drop the kids off like, "Hey, work with my child." And it's like, "No, parent, you're going to come in too." And they're like, "Oh, it's for me? I'm a part of the therapy." I'm like, if you're living in the house, they're living in your house, you're control of their environment. And I just see them for an hour. This is going to be a process where we work together. So I think there still needs to be more and more education about it for sure. But we are making progress. We just got to keep trucking along.
That is good. Before I add on to that, I wanted to say I love that one thing, I'm not a big social media person, but I love that now on social media, you do see more of us talking about therapy, talking about going to therapy, willing to go to therapy, and to see therapists that look like us, you know what I mean? Which is one of the reasons why I was like, oh, I'm going to call her. I want her to be podcast. I need to talk to Miss Alicia because and men, because what's his name? Kara Gaines, I think his name
Mhm.
is. He's a social media influencer, but he is also a therapist.
Okay, great.
And
Yeah.
he's a man and he's a family man. And
Mhm.
he's very honest about his experience going through the process of becoming a new dad. That's really kind of like his claim to recognition where we know him.
Mhm.
But I just love seeing that. And now he really he helps people. He has like a Patreon and everything where he's helping our community. But it's good to see
Beautiful.
a man who came from, I think he's from
Yes.
DC. He grew up poor, so it's a story that looks like ours. It's a person that looks like
Mhm.
us, and it's someone
Mhm.
that's saying, you're not uncool, or there isn't something wrong with you
Yeah.
because you are going to therapy or have a therapist. And it's good to see a presence again of people who look like us
Yeah.
who are doing things.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, yes, it's good. And even celebrities like Kid Cudi, like, oh, I feel like it was like black men somewhere. There was a group of them that said, like, oh, we can say we depressed. Oh, like Kid Cudi like gave them that that permission,
Sure.
to hear celebrities who look like them
Mm-hmm.
say, no, I struggle with this or I have anxiety. So I think it's so important that we're having these conversations and that we talk about it in open forums, because that's how we can. I think that's, as you're talking about the group work that you do, that's like the power of group. That's to say like, oh, I'm not the only person struggling with this. Oh, okay. And it really kind of releases that burden of like, oh, it's me, and it never starts with us. Anybody who's listening, it never starts with us.
No.
It never. This burdens we carry in are sometimes centuries old. It never starts with us.
You better speak on it. And you know what, guys? Shame is a prison. Don't
Yeah.
allow yourself to be imprisoned by shame.
Mm-hmm.
Seek help. It is okay to ask for help. It's okay to talk to someone. Just make sure that it's a safe space. But don't be ashamed, please. If
Yeah.
that is something that I see so much, like I see it in the hospital. Some of my
Mm-hmm.
patients, I see it with clients, and it's just like I'm ashamed. And shame keeps people in abusive situations.
It
Shame
does.
keeps people in a place that's unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
You can grow once you let go of the shame. So it's a prison. Just think of it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um. So we were talking about our community
Yes. Yes.
and therapy in the church. Growing
Yes.
up,
Yes.
growing up, you took everything to the Lord.
You sure did. Or the pastor, if you had issues going on, you would go to the pastor for counsel, or a minister in a church for counsel. Yes, that was the traditional way. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so a lot of people have a misconception where I
Mm,
feel like they have this misconception that therapy means a lack of faith. What are your thoughts on that?
they do. There is this perception. There's even a perception too that like having negative emotions or like is the product of lack of faith. Where's your faith? You have anxiety. Where's your faith? You're grieving. Where's your faith? You're going to a therapist, and I feel like we don't really understand really what faith is, right? Because I'm a church girl, or I can I can say that we talk about how the level of our faith needs to be in order for something to happen, and at the same time, God says that only the faith of a size of a mustard seed could move a mountain. So I don't really feel like the level of our faith has anything to do with any issues that we are handling in this life. And there's also scripture that says God gives us counselors as gifts to utilize in the kingdom. So I'm hoping my religious and spiritual community can hear me to know that there's gifts. There's gifts, just like there's gifts in nurses. Sonya, there's gifts in doctors. There's we go to the barber to get a haircut when we don't, right? When we're seeing something's wrong with our hair that needs to be addressed. And so we can go to a therapist to see that there's something with our mind that needs to be addressed. There's no harm in it. And if they feel safe to have a space where there's a therapist that's a Christian, then that's also available in a space. I don't. call myself a Christian counselor because I feel like that's something different and can be viewed as something different. I just call myself a therapist that happens to be a Christian, and for people who want to have that utilized in their therapy, that's available. But that's not something that I bring or with all my clients, because not all clients are Christians, and so you have to respect that as well. So it needs to be something that we need to just massage a little, because our faith is not on trial. Our faith is not on trial, and I know that that's something that we struggle with at times. I think sometimes we really feel like we have to fight for God's approval when it's already been given, at times. And at the same time, God accepts us just as we are, and he's calling us to be better. So and therapy can be a way that we get there. Absolutely. It's such a beautiful way to get clarity. And so it grieves me to know that there is like a large group of people who just won't have that clarity because of this thought and this mindset, and that will carry things that they don't need to carry. It grieves me, but I'm hoping that we can get there. People keep posting, you can have Jesus and therapists too. So we can keep posting it until we get everybody on board. But I've seen the church growing to accept it. So it's getting there.
Yeah, I have seen more pastors talk about it. And I don't know if you're familiar, but his name is R.C. Blakes. He's on YouTube. He's a pastor. Mm-hmm. And he actually has a sponsorship with BetterHelp, but he also always says, I'm not a therapist. I am, I can help you with this word, but there's other things you need to go and get help with. And I love that he does that. Again, he's a man, he's a Black man, he's a married man, he's a family man.
Beautiful.
And he is a person with a past. And I think that's what people need to understand. So the same thing in healthcare, you'll have people say, my mother had high blood pressure, but that's still abnormal. It doesn't mean that you don't control it. It doesn't mean you don't take your medicines. It doesn't mean you don't change your diet. It doesn't mean you don't exercise. Right? Yeah. What happened doesn't mean it has to be your story for the rest of your life. That's just, a part of your past or a part of your medical history now. Now you have a name and a title to it. Let's do something about it. It doesn't mean let me just keep this blood pressure 200 over 200. That's not what that means. Because you don't have to have a stroke. You don't have to have a heart attack. You don't have to get amputated. Like, these are things you don't have to do because someone else in your family, your parents, were diagnosed with the same thing. And that's a conversation I have a lot of times with my patients. Like, okay, I get it that your mom had it. So let's work on you getting it under control, right? It just, all that means is that it's part of your family history. And it means, it may be a little more difficult. You may have more challenges than someone who just all of a sudden got it because of poor diet or whatever. But you can work on it. So let's just work on it, right? Instead of saying, my mama had it. But I think that's a subconscious thing too. You see that in relationships. It's like, well, we fought.
This is what we do.
This is what we did. We fought. And so, but you can move past it.
Like, you don't fight in your relationships. Yeah, it definitely happens in mental illness too. Like, oh, this is just how the Johnsons are. We just, what? Like, oh, okay, well, maybe. And sometimes it's a delicate conversation to navigate, because it's a lot. It's a lot when you're coming into the realization, like, oh, I'm having panic. I'm like, or telling somebody what they're experiencing is a panic attack, right? And then saying, okay, well, oh, my grandma used to do that all the time. My mama too. I just thought that's how we are. Like, it may be that there's a family history of anxiety that's not being looked at. And so, like, walking a client through that journey can be powerful for them, because it can, again, help give them so much clarity, as to why their grandmother showed up in the way that they did, right? If they were dealing with undiagnosed anxiety, or generalized, I should say, generalized anxiety, and then, oh, okay, so then let me help myself to find some ways to cope and navigate with this. So then I can do something different. I can do something different.
Absolutely. I know when I was in nursing school in my mental health rotation, and when we started going through these diagnoses, I was like, oh, that.
Yes, like, oh, was that? Oh,
Oh,
that's my cousin. Oh,
I read
yeah. We're not supposed to diagnose family, but I understand what you're saying.
But those traits were there. I
Yeah,
don't
you like,
diagnose y'all, but
no,
I was like,
like this
these
sounds familiar.
this,
I think it's conversations that families need to have more often.
mhm.
You need to have conversations about the health conditions that run in the family. They need to have conversations about the mental illness or even the mental struggles that happen in a family. Whether it's like, oh, sometimes this I experience this,
Mhm.
and so then it's not so a child specifically isn't in a place where they're feeling like something's wrong with them because it's not being talked about.
Mhm.
It's not being talked about. And so I really, yes, while we're talking about the social media too, having these same conversations in our homes, to
Absolutely.
really help help children and help individuals navigate this. Because oftentimes, a lot of times, I'll say, okay, what's the family history of mental health? And they're like, well, I don't know. Or, well, my mom was sad sometimes, so I don't know. My dad, they'll normally know the substance use side. So they'll say, my dad drank, or my mom was out, was using, right? And so when, you and I both know that where there's like heavy addiction there, that there's most likely an untreated mental health situation. So I'm always like, okay, so that's how they treated it. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So we need to have more conversations about that in our homes too.
Absolutely. Even if you
Yeah.
just describe it, I think,
Mm-hmm.
like you said earlier, people don't like the title of things, and
Yeah.
again, it puts them back into that shame or feeling like something's wrong with me. But like you said, just describe what's going on in these moments instead of just saying
Mm-hmm.
so and so is not right in the head. That boy just not right in the head, and then kind of
Mm-hmm.
ignore it.
Or he's
We
special.
He's
Then
special
that quotation will
and
say
bless
stuff
his
like that.
heart and all of
Mm-hmm.
those terms. It's like, no,
It's like,
there's
no, he's
more there.
struggling.
Yes.
He's struggling.
Yes.
And so we have to be more mindful about that, because you never know who's listening as you're saying that, because you don't know. A lot of times, and this is a hard thing too, I've experienced it more with parents, where their children come to me saying, I'm experiencing X, Y, and Z. And their parents like, no, they're not. And I'm like, I understand from your view, you feel that way. And at the same time, we're not always aware of what's happening inside of them, or what they're doing internally to manage themselves, so they can
Mm-hmm.
show up in a way that masks what's going on, so that you can feel comfortable. Because oftentimes that's what's happening with children. They're protecting their parents from things. And so we have to accept a person's reality of what they're saying their experience is, so that we can get curious about it and see what's happening here. So yeah, we have to listen to people and hear what they're saying, and not use words that will harm their process of getting help.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So before I get into this question,
Yes.
we talked a little bit earlier about feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I find when I suggest therapy to people is what they don't know what you guys are saying when you're saying stand in it or you need to feel. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean? And of course, we talked about it earlier, it causes so much anxiety because people spend,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
pick up poor coping mechanisms just so they
Mm-hmm.
can't feel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what are you guys saying when you say you need to feel it?
Feel it. To sit in your feelings. Yeah, to sit in your feelings. Like, what does that mean? Yeah, I think it means, one, to be present with yourself. Wow. To be present with yourself, to be actively thinking about it, and identifying too any beliefs that are attached to it, right? And so feeling your feelings is not pushing them down, not dismissing them, but saying to yourself, it's okay that you feel this way, validating that. Even if, hear me out, even if it may be irrational, okay? Even if it doesn't make sense, because sometimes our feelings just don't make sense. They don't, but they're coming from a place that's usually a younger place within us, but they're coming from a place that's real to it, and it's carrying some beliefs that may not be accurate. And so that's what's making this feeling, be irrational. So many clients will say, oh, this sounds so silly to say this. Holy shit, I don't want to say this. I'm like, just say it. Just say it. It's okay. It's okay. I say, now, there's no judgment here. And what you're feeling, it needs to be heard. It's been longing to be heard. It's been longing to hurt. So sitting in your feelings is allowing yourself to feel and not dismissing it, but also examining it, getting curious about it, and processing it with yourself while, where you told that client to journal their feelings, right? To journal it, whether it is, some people use art to express their feelings, so finding outlets that are helpful to you, but definitely doing it, because we are channels, like how we are made. We're channels. Things are meant to go through us. We're not good vessels. We're not supposed to hold stuff. And so that's how we do get a lot of illnesses and body aches and all of that, because we're holding so much. We got pain in our shoulders. We got constant headache in the same place, because our shoulders are up so high because we got, all this tense from all these burdens we're carrying, right? We got lower back pain. We got TMJ because we're grinding our teeth, so we have to take time to unload and unburden these feelings. So yes, I know we say so many things as therapists. I think everybody knows. Just sit in your feelings. They're like, so I'm sitting. What am I supposed to do next? Yes, but make sure you're doing it in a safe space too, because I think sometimes people try to do it with friends and family. And unfortunately, we are limited. And it's nothing against friends or family. We are limited. Sometimes we meet other people with our protections. Even I do it sometimes unknowingly. And I'm like, okay, back up, Alicia. Okay, listen to the person, because you're meeting them with how you want them to deal with the situation versus hearing them out. Sometimes I get like that. And I have to tell Alicia to chill out for a moment and listen to this person, listen to how they're feeling, and hear them out. Because we do that sometimes. People, we're limited. So making sure you have a space where you can process and examine your feelings from a non-judgmental space.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. See, guys, it's not so bad. And you can find all kind of ways to get through those feelings. Music, like you said, drawing. I tell some people to use on their phone. I was like, sometimes just take your phone, the memo on your phone, and say whatever you have to say in that memo. You don't have to send it to anybody. Not them. Like, write a letter to yourself, write a letter to that person, write a letter to those feelings, right? There's so much you can do. But, my best friend, because she always like, I don't want to sit in my feelings. I don't know what So that
don't tell me to do that, Sonya. Don't tell me to do that, Sonya. Don't tell me to do that. Even she's like, don't tell me. Don't tell me. She's like, okay. But yes. And also too, vlogging, like even having your camera out. And so, it can be helpful too. So it's something about that for some people to do that, because it kind of can be a reference point for something to watch, but definitely in any way that you feel comfortable to do it. And even doing that with a therapist, sometimes my clients, I'm like, would it be better for you to write it out? Would it be easier? And they're like, yeah, actually it would be. And so you can do it.
Right. And then also sometimes seeing that thing on paper makes you realize, you know what, I'm tripping. It's you like, oh. And then sometimes you realize,
it connects the dots. Like sometimes there's so many thoughts in our mind that it's like overwhelming. It feels like a Rubik's Cube that's never going to come together. And then when you write it out, it's like, oh, okay. So I was feeling that way because of that. And this is what I needed. Okay. So it just makes things so much clearer at times. Like you're saying, like, oh, okay, that felt so much heavier than what's really happening. Right. And like, okay, all right. Now, and it takes the weight off of it. Like, okay, I can handle this. It's still an issue, right? And it's still real, but I can handle it. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're stronger than we give ourselves credit for a lot of times.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So what are the benefits of therapy?
I think the biggest benefit of therapy is that you get to, well, my hope is that you get to learn more about yourself, learn more about the systems around you and how they're impacting you. You get to be able to get clarity about how you got here. So I think that's always like a big question. Like, why do I do the things that I do? Why do I do this? It just doesn't make sense. Like, I logically know that, if I want to do this, then I need to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm not doing it. Why? How did I get here? And so you get to answer that question for yourself, and then develop a plan, develop an action plan, a process to work to get to places where you're achieving goals. And you got a partnership with somebody that's not judging you, hopefully, that's not judging you, and that is invested. They're like totally invested in your success and you reaching these goals. So it's such a beautiful relationship to have, and I'm even as a therapist, I love when my clients are seeing themselves in a clearer view, and then also get into the place where they are able to navigate things better. They're like, before, if that would have happened, I would have lost it. But now, okay, I'm navigating things, so I'm speaking up for myself. And I'm growing. I was able to, like, I felt the anxiety coming on, but I just, I stayed in tune with my body. I attended to myself, and then I was able to proceed and move forward. So, like, this is such a beautiful relationship. So you learn so many tools and strategies, and you learn about yourself. So it's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. Y'all, I'm telling you, get some therapy. Because it's empowering to know that you can control yourself. I'm speaking from a personal space.
Yes.
It's empowering to know that you can control yourself, that you can think through things, that you can figure it out. It's just about being able to control yourself in a safe way, where you're not constantly putting yourself in danger, where you're not sabotaging your relationships, where you're not sabotaging yourself, when you're not, all of these things. It's so beautiful. And like I said, my best friend, always want somebody to go to therapy. Listen, because it's the best thing ever. It's the best thing ever.
Your best friend go hurt too.
Yeah, I told her this was for her. I love her. It's not even that she needs it. It's just that she teases me. Well, we all need it, but it's just that she teases me all the time. Because I'm like, well, they need to go to therapy. She's like, yeah, you always put somebody in therapy. That's my boo. I love you. Hey, Inky. But it is freeing because you learn. I talk a lot about standing in your power, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
when you have those tools and you understand who you are, you stand in that power because you can say,
Mm-hmm.
people's perceptions of you, when people are
Mm-hmm.
putting their mess on your porch,
Yes.
you can say that doesn't belong
That
to
doesn't
me.
belong
Return
to
to
me.
sender, right? And
Not
that
mine.
happens. There you go. And it happens a lot in families, and we don't feel like we have that voice to say to mom, to
Yeah.
granny, to dad, to our siblings, especially like if you have an older sibling that was like the
Mm-hmm.
parent, you don't have that place or space to say no. It's
No.
not okay for you to do these things, or I can love
Mm-mm.
you from a distance, all these other
Absolutely.
things.
I'm gonna love you from a
I'm going
distance.
absolutely going. I love a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people from a distance. That's why I don't feel like love is just an action word. I have that conversation with people all the time. I'm like, no, because I love a lot of people from a distance. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not showing them any action, but I pray for them. I pray
Yeah.
for them. I send them good
Mm-hmm.
vibes. But baby, you over here and I'm over there, and I love you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
God bless you. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so is freedom. It is a lot of freedom
Yes. Absolutely.
to being healed.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some of the common concerns you see around those patients, and then what encouragement do you give to your population,
Mm-hmm.
or would you give to your population or patients, people in general?
You know, people come to me for a myriad of reasons. They're anxious or sad or even having, it's usually like a behavior they want to stop, right? They're uncomfortable with, whether they're having some suicidal ideation or they're drinking or, things like that. And they're like, oh, this is getting in the way of life. And really what's at the root of it is like invalidation, that they have been either in spaces where they experience hurtful things and it was not validated, and they were made to feel like it's my fault, I'm the problem, and not really saying what happened to you was not okay, right? uh, Also, a lot of times, unfortunately, especially for us as Black people, we experience a lot of trauma that has been just something that we feel very comfortable around. It's very, and so it's a lot of coming to educate, like, no, actually, that is something that like you deserve respect as a child, or you deserve to have your voice being heard, and so that's like like you deserve to just say, no, mom, I don't like that, and that's okay. Like, you can have an opinion. And so there are a lot of times their voices have been shut down, which then if their voice is shut down, then they are bottling their emotions, which is leading to other things, right? And so a lot of it is really about again, first what I mentioned before, invalidation, but then how we interact with each other. We're still learning about healthy relationships. Sometimes I feel like we go to the extreme sometimes in this healthy relationship talk. And I know you hear it as a relationship coach, you have to, first we go from porous boundaries, right? Everybody gets in, everybody gets a yes, to rigid boundaries. Now nobody gets in. It's a no. It's a no. It's a no.
Right,
and I'm
right.
like, we got to find a meet with somebody kind of coming in the door. Like, so we're still learning on how to navigate, those relationships. And a lot of times our relationships impact our mental health. Like, we have to be, and how we relate to each other. So I think sometimes we feel like it's the person in the relationship. I really feel like how we think about relationships is the issue. And so a lot of people, like I said, come to me for a myriad of issues that they feel is happening, but what's at the core of it is really their relationship with themselves. Yeah. Which is the one that needs the most nurturing, because I say it's the longest relationship you're gonna have. People are going to leave you, but you're going to be with yourself until you're here, forever how long you're here. So nurture that relationship with yourself, because that's going to directly impact how you respond to other people and how you interact with other people. So Definitely, those are some big ones. But unfortunately, trauma is very prevalent. It's sad to say that, because sometimes I feel like that there is like this thought that it doesn't happen as often, or maybe there's a belief or that, oh, it doesn't happen that much, but trauma is unfortunately pretty common. And it feels like it even breaks my heart to say that. But it really is. And again, it just goes back into that relationship issue that because oftentimes trauma is really, most times it's from someone that's known. Yeah, versus unknown. There are those cases where that does happen, unknown. And most of the time it's happening from somebody we know. And so it's just learning how to know what you deserve, like, and knowing your worth, like you were talking about, knowing, coming from that place to see the power, like, and so a way I definitely encourage my clients, is to, one, give them that validation, that they have really been longing for. It was one as a client, and they, and so many times I hear this from my clients. Nobody ever said that to me. I didn't know that was I didn't know that was a lot. I thought that was just how, no, you deserve for someone to attend to your feelings. I think there's that thought out there. We say this, oh, they're just doing that for attention. It's attention-seeking behavior. And there are attention-seeking behaviors, but most of the time people are doing it because they didn't get the attention when they needed it. And so attending to those wounds, I think it's so important. And making them know, giving them, empowering them to also, and I know it's not fair. It's not, but empowering them also to attend to them as well. Like you can take that power back by giving yourself what you didn't get.
Right. Self-parenting, y'all. You gotta do.
You gotta do it.
You gotta do it. You gotta do it.
Because even if your parent was the best parent in the world, they still were human. So there are some things that got lost, and that didn't get, those needs didn't get met. And so wherever they lacked, you have to fall in line. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's where knowing yourself comes into play. It's funny because, like, two people can grow up in the same place and space with the same parents, but how it impacts them can be completely different. And, one person, that tough love motivated them to be the best version of themselves. That other person, that tough love fostered the insecurity, and now they don't feel like they can ever measure up. So you have to get to know yourself enough to know the difference in what you need and who you are and what those thought processes are. And again, those empty spaces that need to be filled. And I, try to tell people that, because I always talk about self-love and I always talk about healing. And like you said, some people can go too far and you're like, but I'm like, well, you're still in a relationship. I'm not saying don't respect your partner because
I'm like, how did we get here? We in a room by ourselves because you won't let nobody in here.
Like, no, there is a difference. And I always use myself as an example. Like, okay, I can say, okay, I can get it. I'm okay with being in a relationship, right? I'm okay with being in a relationship with a person that fits me best versus just being in a relationship. But I'm not like, I love myself, so I'm just going to be by myself for the rest of my life. No, I've never, like the panel we were on, we were talking about marriage. I won't, it's just that I won't die without marriage. I'm not like, oh my God, if I don't get married, then I don't get married.
It's not a make or break.
It's not a make or break. For some people it is, but it's like when we talk about this journey, people feel like you're saying shut everybody else off and just love
Mm,
yourself. No, loving yourself actually helps you love other people better. You give them more grace.
absolutely.
You
Hmm.
give them more understanding. You
Yes.
recognize them as a person.
Yes. You hear
She
that,
said,
everybody?
yes.
Yes. Uh,
It
Grace, we
helps you
need
not,
it.
you do. It helps you not be so
Hmm.
judgmental.
Have so high expectations, right?
Speak on them expectations because
Because nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. And even like even there in therapy too. I'm gonna let the cat out the bag. I don't think that there's a way for us to be like 100% healed, whatever that means. Like
right,
that, I feel like we can get to a place where things we aren't responsive as we are responding from a place of hurt and letting. And so we have to be aware of our wounds, or what I say activates us, because I feel like there is like a spectrum of triggering, right, things. And
mm-hmm.
so what we have to be aware of what activates us, and learn from them, attend to them,
Mm-hmm.
for us to respond from a place, right,
Mm-hmm.
that is centered, and that is come from a place where we're not over responding and saying nobody gets in nowhere. And if you want to be single for the rest of your life, that is your choice. There's nothing wrong with that. And at the same time, examine and get curious about why that is. Are you doing that just because, hey, you want to travel and that's what you want to do? Or are
Mm-hmm.
you doing that as a way because you don't trust yourself in relationships? Are you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And know the difference. You got to know the difference because
Yes.
again, a lot of people have taken this because self-love, that's the new buzzword, and a lot of people have
Mm-hmm.
taken it to, well, I'm just gonna be by myself. But do you want to be by yourself? Like you said, is this just an armor to just keep everybody
Yeah.
out so you don't worry about it because you don't trust yourself, you don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
can make these decisions? Or
Mm-hmm.
is this just, I'm just waiting for the right time, or I need this place and space for healing? For
Mm-hmm.
me, I had never been single as much
Mm-hmm.
as I wanted to be single, because again,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about it. I came from the church and everybody's like, you got to find a husband. I'm like, okay, I guess I got to find the reason why I accepted my fiance's proposals because my grandmother told me God told her that was my husband. He proposed 3 times. He was a great man. He is a great
Mm-hmm.
man, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I had been parenting since I was 7. I just
Mm.
wanted to live my life. I didn't want to be
Yeah.
responsible and accountable for anything or anyone. I just
Mm.
wanted to live my life. But
Yeah.
I'm telling you, every time I turned around, I was in a relationship and I'm like, and then I have to try to sabotage my way out of it. And I would do that,
Right. Get on somewhere.
I would push him away. I would push him away, or, one thing
Mm-hmm.
would happen. I'd be like, okay, that's it. It's over. And I had to say to myself, like, okay, well, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And in this time, I've learned to be by myself and learn really who I am, what I
Yeah.
like, what I need, what I want. And there's some decisions that I made, I will still make those decisions right now today. And there are other decisions that I made that are different. Like now, I won't even bother to get into a relationship that I already know doesn't have a future. Whereas then it's like, well,
Yeah.
he's a nice guy. And my grandmother said, or that, there's this misconception,
Mm-hmm.
well, he's doing what he's supposed to do, so I guess I should go ahead and do this. Now I know, even though you're a great guy,
Yeah.
I don't see a future with you,
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
try to tell people that is the difference.
Yeah.
Triggering, you spoke on that, and this is so important because no, you'll never be 100%,
Mm-hmm.
100%. We all have lessons we have to learn here.
Yeah.
And a wound is still a wound. I tell people if you break your back was broken. Even if you have surgery, no matter what,
Mm-hmm.
your back once upon a time was broken. You
Yeah.
learn to manage those things. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
me, I know my triggers. There's certain places and spaces you'll never see me in and never see me dealing with because I know that's not good for me. And that's
Right.
all, we want
Mm-hmm.
when we are trying to help people with these, mental health and wellness and becoming the best version of yourself and loving yourself, just so you can learn to operate out of a healthy space and you know yourself enough to know, what, that's
Mm-hmm.
not me. I had to apologize for a trigger. I don't like to be told what to do. Like I told you, I'm rebellious, right? And it was, I've been tired, and I was talking to someone, and she was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, I'm just gonna do this." And I kind of like snapped at her. And then I called her back and I apologized to her and I let her
Mm-hmm.
know this wasn't for you. This is
Mm-hmm.
why this was. Well, once upon a time, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I'm just using
Yeah.
it as an example, guys. You can
Mm-hmm.
always, it's just about learning how to manage yourself and understanding who
Yes.
you are and what you need and things like that. This isn't about you are mentally insane and you have to, because that's another
Mm-mm.
thing people think, oh, they can put me on pills. Sometimes you might need some, but
I'm like, in my mind, I said, what's wrong with that? But I know that there's a thought that's that fear. So, what I tell people who are afraid of that is you have a say.
you
You
do.
can say, I don't want to take them. And that doesn't mean that you end the therapy. Like just because someone recommends something doesn't mean that, oh, she think I need to take pills or he need to think that I'm not gonna have a conversation about it. You can voice, you can assert your voice to say, I don't really want to do that. Okay. And if you're talking to a therapist, my hope is that the person will hear you and receive it. That's what we're supposed to do. And even ask questions about that.
Right.
Because I think sometimes two people have a lot of misconceptions about medication. But two, also, there's some even valid reasons why that is. So to have a conversation about it, to have a conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been so wonderful. I appreciate you so much for coming
Oh
on.
yes.
Thank you. Great conversation.
Mhm.
Where can we find you, Miss Jackson?
I am everywhere, even on TikTok. Laura, help me. It took me a minute to learn TikTok, but I got it because I'm a little, like I said, I'm a little aged, seasoned. That's what we said, seasoned. But you can find me everywhere at Alicia Jackson LPC. I'm on my YouTube channel. I have TikTok. I have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook page, Alicia Jackson LPC. I'm everywhere.
Wonderful. And I look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
Yes, we have to meet up again.
Absolutely. Well, guys, that is the conclusion of tonight's episode of Let the Ladies Speak. I appreciate you being here. I can't wait for you to come back. Please check me out on all social media platforms as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. I'll be there as well.
Yes.
Leave me a comment. Let me know you stopped by. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And please don't forget to love yourself for who you are. Have a wonderful night. Take care. Bye bye.